Okay. So next is the discussion about updating Section 5 selection process. I want to thank Jared and the other tellers for all the work they did putting together a proposal. During the last election back in the spring, it was noted that we could amend the charter and code to address some inconsistencies and to codify our existing practice of having our elections. Thank you, Steve. Managed by independent tellers. We asked for the tellers, as I noted, to work with the village manager and our attorney, come up with drafts for our consideration. They reviewed recommendations from our residents, such as Farouk, took notes at the polls from the last election on best practices that could be implemented. Notably, our attorney, as I just commented, represents 10 other local governments in Montgomery County, shared his experience with them. We now have drafts. We posted them. And if we vote to introduce them tonight, the residents would have the opportunity. Julie, thank you again for coming. I look forward to talking to you soon. It's a pleasure. Good luck. Public would have an opportunity to review them. We'd have a public hearing at our next meeting with a possible adoption at that time. Importantly, I don't think there's anything earth-shattering here. These new rules would legally codify our existing practices, clear some things up. For example, our code currently makes reference to election tellers and an election judge. The drafts would replace these references with an election board. Certain duties are currently assigned to the manager and incumbents, like approving absentee ballot applications, receiving completed ballots. We found this to be odd. Duties are currently being informally taken by the appointed tellers. The draft would shift these duties to the election board. Charter be amended to expressly allow the appointment of the election board, and the code would be trimmed down a bit to remove duplicative and unnecessary provisions, and we'd adopt new election rules to contain the administrative details. Under state law, the charter amendment must introduce at one meeting, hold over for at least 20 days, and then have a hearing at a second meeting. It becomes effective 50 days after adoption. In other words, it would be effective before the May election. For an ordinance to amend the code, we must introduce it at one meeting, hold over for at least 8 days, and hold a hearing at a second meeting. That would become adopted 20 days after adoption. So for practical reasons, we're going to place all three documents on the same timeline, introduce drafts tonight to the public, hear from the public at our next meeting, and then decide if we want to adopt with or without changes. Any comments from anyone on the council?
Yes, thank you for that table setting, Greg. And I think a couple of issues to raise based on the drafts that are before us, and then others may have something to raise as well. I found I'm talking about the rules and procedures document. So just for everybody's, as Greg said, there's the charter amendment, there is the ordinance, and then there are the rules and procedures, right, for the election. These are posted in the rules document. There's a reference to the idea that the election board may organize a forum, a candidate forum, to take place during an election. And I believe there may be a reference to that also in the ordinance. I'm forgetting right now, but certainly the rules. And I guess from my perspective, I feel that the election board is vested with a great responsibility and a lot of work as it is in doing what they are supposed to do, just as the tellers did in this election and previously too. And I feel that there's a burden to place on them to even have the specter of organizing a forum. It feels that an election board, that probably is not the role. It is an independent group or a group of citizens, as has been suggested before, to come together to get the candidates there, to do the questions, make sure it's fair. And I would just think that one, it's a burden, and two, there could be accusations of the election board not being as neutral as we know it will act. If something goes wrong at a forum for whatever reason, somebody's audio cuts out, someone feels they were not chased down to attend questions that are organized by the forum, I feel like there could be that happening as well. I do think that the that the election should feature statements from candidates and certainly a forum and get all the information out there. My feeling is that that responsibility shouldn't be vested in the election board, even with the term may. So I guess I would suggest amending it to delete reference to the forum, and let's leave that to the residents or an independent group that may be approached to organize such an event. So that was one thought. I think another thought I wanted to raise is about the idea of having an uncontested election. And
Yeah, I was gonna say,
okay,
I was gonna raise that.
thank
one.
you. Yeah, please go ahead. That is my proposal, though, on the forum piece, is to delete reference to the forum, and I yield the floor.
I believe we've actually added something about that in the draft that was there was an updated draft posted.
Not for the forum, for the.
Not the form, no, what I'm about to.
Yes,
talk
what
about.
I'm going to say.
Yeah.
Greg, go ahead.
No, that-
And then Brooke may have a counter.
No,
Anyway.
yes, thank you for clarifying. So, a sentence or two was added about if there's an uncontested election, then we would not have an election. There's no write-in procedure here. There's no reason to have the cost and the time spent to vote for 2 or 3 candidates if both candidates or all 3 candidates, depending on the election, are going to be elected. So purely for efficiency's sake and to save costs, that if there are only the same number of candidates as seats, there would be no election, which also has been our practice in the past.
I would just add, too, it saves burden on the election board.
Oh, absolutely.
As well as on the town manager.
Yes.
Thank you. And then there may be another issue to raise.
Yeah. First of all, Jared's here. Thank you so much for doing all of this, and to Christina, and Julian. I would like to reiterate, does seem consistent, having been an election before you, that what is happening here with the election rules and procedures is sort of putting into place the best practices that I think you all undertook this past election. So thank you very much for doing that. We're very appreciative. I think the sort of related to both what Josh and Greg had said, if you look on page 1 of the election rules and procedures, section C, where it's suggested that the election board shall seek qualified nominees if it determines there will not be enough names of candidates on the ballot to fill the offices being selected at the election. While I think in concept, it would be great to have more candidates, and I hope people as regular citizens do this, it also seems to me like a conflict of interest to have the group that is managing the details of the election also to be doing recruiting. I think the appearance of impropriety, and certainly I think about when I ran this past time, if I had heard say that the election tellers were or asking other candidates to run, I think that would have had a chilling effect. I would have said, okay, great, there's another neighbor that they think would do it, and I probably would have stepped back. I think that those responsibilities should be kept separate, and I would probably, while I hope that we can figure out a way in the section to, keep having contested elections and keep getting candidates on the ballot, I too don't think I would task the election board with seeking these qualified nominees, and so I would probably move to strike section C in its entirety and the election board duties. I have a few other small changes. Is this the right or
Yep, now
suggestion? Okay. Again, I'm focused on the rules and the procedures. On page 1, under section A, I would probably add in coordination with the town manager and to that section, because we basically, Jared, you guys have laid it out. In other section, you mentioned consulting with the town manager, and it was my experience, and I think you guys did too, that the town manager actually did the printing of the ballots, and so I just would be explicit about that. Does that sound?
Most of the time.
We put it in, and that's
Stories.
totally, and that was the only one that it wasn't, and so thank you for saying that. I appreciate it. And then sort of, I think this is, again, so now I'm on page 2, going to the summarized election calendar. So there was, which I think is great, there was a section added about canvassing the mail-in ballots. And I think what this referred to is when the mail-in ballots come back to the election board, they are in 2 envelopes. And if you are able to open the outer envelope, to get to the ballot that's signed. So you're not actually looking at anyone's, who they've actually voted for. You're just getting to their envelope. By opening that outer envelope ahead of time, you would be able to make sure that it is in fact allowed to be processed and everything is filled out right. And so I'm really glad that you added that explicitly because it was something I know that we worried about. I just, for the purposes of the report, I might just change the parentheses to say resolve ballot errors. I just think report errors to voters makes it sound like maybe the election tellers or the election board are going to make a report to the section or tell all voters about issues. And I think what you're saying is you're trying to cure the ballot.
That's a word that I'm about to suggest.
However,
That needs to be cured if necessary or something.
We should have that.
And again, these are picky little things that I'm bringing up, but yes,
Yeah.
I just don't want there to.
Start of the annual meeting, right?
Pardon?
With the cure deadline being the start of the annual.
I think the cure deadline is actually
I think it's maybe by an in-person voting
begins.
Okay.
Yeah, because they have to have,
Yeah.
I think that.
Because
What's whatever, which,
Because if you don't specifically dictate your deadline for cure.
Absolutely.
Then you've got this gray area, which is problematic.
but shouldn't the deadline for curing just be when the ballots are due?
That's how we've handled it. I think we
By the
cured
close of the polls.
Right.
Okay, so by
or at the polls.
Right, so it should be by the close of polls.
By the close of the polls, because we can just make ballots, including cured ballots, must be placed in the drop box or received by mail by the closing of the polls.
But people can come to in-person voting and drop.
it.
Right.
Yeah.
Drop boxes aren't still.
They pull them up.
Okay.
You take the here, wherever you open it. Sure.
Is there an expectation then that the election board is going to be responsive to voters who may be delayed in getting back to them to cure the issues while they're, say, counting the votes or dealing with the people coming in to vote? I mean, I wouldn't want
Well,
to miss that.
as I read this, I mean, if someone gets a ballot in after, well, I don't like the approximately actually, because if we don't have a set deadline, I'm worried that ambiguity allows for
Right, somebody to
discretion you don't want discretion on.
Yeah.
I mean,
Rachel, do you know a copy of this?
I just,
I don't, but let me pull it up.
I mean, there's got to be a point if someone turns a ballot in late and it's not done properly. Unfortunately, there's not time for curing, but we want to allow for curing if possible. So we want a deadline there that says, what's enough time for the election board to make sure that the person is filled out the ballot properly and to be clear. I'm not talking about whom they voted for. I think that's obvious, but I'm going to say it anyway. But in terms of that, it would be a valid ballot. They didn't sign it, for example, is the most obvious example. And so the question is, I think we would want a hard deadline for that. It could be 1 week, it possibly could be less if we think that's, and it doesn't have to be tied to the candidate, the option. I mean, if the candidate form is optional, I'm not even sure we need to, mention it. Obviously, that would be ideal.
I think we're taking out.
Well,
Sorry, what was the last point you made?
I'm not sure we need it. So, I mean, I would want to say, either 7 days before the election or 5 days before the election, to canvass mail-in ballots and allow voters opportunity to cure if necessary.
I would think you probably need a ballot cure section of the rules and procedures that spell this out very specifically, that sets, for the sake of conversation, the last Tuesday in April for a meeting of the election board, at which point the mail-in ballots are canvassed.
And then it'd be Friday before.
But the only thing is weird, I mean, the only issue is
We allowed mail-in ballots all the way up until
election day. So there's going to be a period where if someone does a late ballot and it's invalid, it's not going to be able to be cured. But that's just, I think that's fine because
If they're not reachable or here,
It may be why it was report errors to voters. My original change was report errors to respective voters or individual voters. I just didn't want there to be a thought that there would be a bigger report made.
Audience.
Right. And so I don't know if we,
Might not be something we need to specify in the.
Right, these are rules,
Yeah.
exactly, it's,
So it could be, I mean, we put this out with the edit that Brooke is suggesting, so I think.
and then
that's really-
we could look into it a little bit.
Yeah, and then before, yeah.
perhaps add a section that we then
Right.
The rules.
adopt to the rules.
That could be, it doesn't require the same like introduction and lengthy, I think we wanna get.
I mean, I think that's fine, and I think it's more important that we allow ballots to be delivered up to election day, even if that means some people may have a spoiled ballot, than to have an earlier deadline where people get the vote.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there were 0 errors, I think, last election.
What a very smart,
Right, we had a great section.
we're not going with Chads, I guarantee.
Or butterfly ballot.
Probably, I think probably from your, correct me if I'm wrong, but we were always wondering when could we open, how early was too early, and I think that's probably were 1 week prior to the election, because there was some concern that we wouldn't want to start this process. When was the right time to start it?
We're also proposing changing kind of how the mail ballots work, so that.
It's possible to mail them.
Yeah, one.
Be able to do it, yeah.
Is that presumably a lot more people voting and a lot more ballots, so we had to wait during the annual meeting to actually start opening them and curing any problems.
That won't work.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And it would be too late or just very onerous or time consuming, so we wanted to increase participation. We also wanted to make sure people, if there were errors, or if they had mailed in a ballot and then showed up, we already had time to know that they had already returned their ballot and that they were voting again, and be able to tell them, hey, sorry, you already voted.
sure.
So that was kind of the intention, but I don't.
We're not Chicago.
Exactly, early enough. I think I don't know if there's any problem with putting some sort of limitation on that.
Well, and I'm looking, if you look, on page, started ballot acceptance procedures, there is more guidance on that later. I don't know, maybe this is the section, we'll check, and in the meantime, I think we need to talk to Ron.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Yes.
But that may be the section that you're thinking we need, Ron, that, right?
Yeah.
I think that's right.
Section 9, or what would that be? Section 11 and 12.
So, purposes of keeping everything on the same timeline, that would be used, the rules is to remove the candidate forum held in this table here, and then to.
I think there may be another reference to candidate forum.
Right,
there,
that's-
and that's-
Page 3.
Yeah, and to, yes,
Yeah.
that one as well, but then on this page to do, to, instead of report errors to voters, resolve ballot errors. And then maybe next meeting we have Ron come and talk more about the curing deadlines.
I would actually, can we just strike that whole parenthetical and just say canvas mail-in ballots in the table, and then
then we can have.
Yeah.
And then we can-
Yeah, I think that's right.
I wanted to raise one other issue, which is section 13 about a tie vote. It seems to me costly and just burdensome to have a runoff election. And I know a lot of jurisdictions, much larger than ours, state legislatures, they either flip a coin, draw lots, do something along those lines.
Virginia.
Exactly. Virginia, actually, a majority was decided in the state House or Senate a bunch of years ago by drawing lots.
Yes.
And I think, I mean, I would, now the only problem with the coin flip would be if there were, I mean, the lots I kind of like, because if there are more than 2 people theoretically tied, you just put, several pieces of paper in a hat and one has an X in it and that person wins. Or if there were 3 people tied for 2 seats, you have 2 X's or something. I just,
But this is not, just for clarification, that wasn't a change, right? We've always had this type,
Yes.
so this is not a new suggestion.
Correct.
Just suggesting to change the
Yes.
procedure that's been on the books for a long time.
which to my knowledge, and I'm sure someone could correct me, we've lived here a lot longer than I have, but that's never happened. But it has happened in the real world.
The B, which is like they can just decide.
Sure, well, that could stay. I mean,
Yeah.
that's always possible if someone withdraws, but it just seems that the idea of doing a runoff seems kind of crazy and
Could you change it from there May to shall, or like from shall to May? There may be a runoff election.
I mean, I'd rather just say it in the event that lots will be drawn, and that's how it's done.
I'm just wanting to check also that the charter or the code doesn't have anything about a runoff, because that would have implications.
No, we have to make sure it all, yeah, it's
Extends all the way
consistent.
over.
Absolutely. That's one of the reasons we're doing this.
If we could, if you want the tellers to continue, we can take that to run and just.
I think that makes sense.
There are 4 things or 3 things typically are done X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, right. And if
This came up, we didn't really spend a lot of time on it because it seemed like.
It was already there.
It's already there.
I'm not criticizing you guys for not focusing on it. It's just something as I was looking over this, it came to my mind as potentially an unnecessary and trying to save,
Yeah.
a burdensome process that I would, who knows, as often these runoffs not having full vote and all sorts of things.
It's also part of it, to give people vote one time.
That's my point. Yeah, exactly what I'm saying.
No, we didn't spend time on it because it was a provision.
Yeah.
No, sure.
It's just, it is an actual tie, just to be clear, as opposed to a runoff that you're within 2%
No,
of it.
this
You
is-
know what I mean?
it's
So
like
you
number
have to hit it on the head for
On
it
the
to,
head.
For it to happen.
Yes.
So I don't know.
Just to stay on schedule, because in order for the charter updates to be in place by the election, we do need to introduce it tonight.
Yep,
So
right.
we can about any change, but I'm looking down, I don't think that there's anything about the runoffs in the charter, so.
And we can double check it as well. So before, I just wanted to also echo thanks to the 3 of you. Just for the record, Jared, you, Christina, Julian, you guys answered the call and worked really hard on it. And we know it's not easy to spend time with the lawyer, and give all the hard read, and really appreciate all the time that you spent. So
We spent most of the time working on the forum thing, which is.
Yeah. Sean,
Sorry
you want
about
to
that.
thank Jared and,
yeah, you want to do it too. Yes.
Put more priority on the candidate states, but somehow it's.
I
Yeah, I thought we actually eliminated the forum.
Reading your mind.
Try to make the statements a little bit more of a formal thing, because being able to, you have a statement from everybody and deliver that to all the residents is probably the most telling.
It is, and on the day of or whatever for nominations, I saw that. It's great. So
Yeah.
well done. Good idea.
yeah. And note, if obviously, as I said earlier, all we're doing tonight is introducing something, but if people do have some comments right now, some initial comments, they're welcome to make them.
Well, I do.
Oh, I'm sorry, Sean, I'm sorry, I apologize.
No. Well, we'll do comments and then I'll ask a procedural question.
Okay. So back to comments.
Yeah.
Anybody in the room or on Zoom?
anyone on Zoom?
Okay, Sean?
So, I guess a procedural question on the proposed changes that we're talking about here. Do each of them have to be voted on?
No. Separately? No. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand and make clear the process to make the strikes that we're talking about.
No, it's not they're not separate votes, but we can tweak things if we need to, and at least certain that.
Great, it's helpful.
So just to be clear, what, for the runoff piece, what you're proposing to strike that entirely, to change it to?
My proposal would be that to change 13A to, in the event to change, after the comma, to say, the tied candidates would draw lots to determine which candidate or candidates are elected.
Mm.
Obviously, candidates would be if there were 3 people tied for 2 seats
Mm.
or something, or for 3.
I'm just not sure. They were going to turn into all lots.
What?
It would be candidates, even if it's just 2 people.
Right, no, I said which candidate or candidates are elected. The plural for that part. Yeah, obviously the first part would have to be plural.
we can, and we'll ask Ron.
We'll just make sure that's kosher.
Yeah.
Do we have a motion to introduce these three documents?
I'll make that motion, to do it as an omnibus motion, to adopt the, changes to the charter and to the ordinance and to make those publicly available, of course, according to the timeline that you laid out, that will be clear. And for comment by residents and consideration and consideration at our next meeting. And seeing the rules being consistent with those changes for the ordinance and the charter.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.